guys! Well, jokes aside, I thought I would come here and teach a little bit about how I render, since it's something that I'm asked a lot about. I'm going to separate the topics into hair, clothing, and skin to make it easier, the first one being the latter. The first topic that I want to talk about is a good base. Now, I know you probably don't want to hear about structure in a video about rendering, like it's supposed to be fun, but I genuinely think it's important. Because if your rendering looks good and your sketch can't match it, it will really show. And I'm commenting about it because it's like a mistake that I commit a lot. You can see on some of my drawings that most of the comments are about how my structure sucks, and I can't deny it. So, if you want to save yourself from people being really pissed, I really recommend you focusing on structure. Remember that Shutterverse controversy a few months ago? Well, this is totally relevant for this video besides this image. I think it perfectly encapsulates what I mean. So now that I scared you to life about it, let's talk about actual rendering. So my first step is getting the line art in. The line art on my particular style is gonna disappear one way or another, so it is mostly there to preserve the structure. I like to color in what the background will be first, so I can make more informed color choices. Color is something that is gonna affect your rendering greatly, so I really recommend you to have a good idea of the harmony that you want before before you start putting colors in. So because for this drawing I purposely wanted that more dull feel, that kind of chic, preppy school, kind of vintage coloration to it. I did it in this kind of salmon background because I felt like it would match really well. I do not recommend you to reference the colors directly though. For the image that you're gonna see on the side of the screen a lot, I actually fixed a little bit of the coloring with my own methods, like some color grading. We're gonna talk about it in just a second, and color correction on Procreate itself. When I get the perfect colors and gradients ready, I start applying a little bit of life to the character's skin. I first start with the blush because I feel like it's something that really attracts an audience when your character looks healthy and flushed. So I start with that, but I also add a little bit of a bluish tinge on the part that would have a beard and a little bit of a yellowish tinge on the forehead. Now, I'm not really sure why the forehead is yellow, but it does look good, and I feel like looking good is a very important aspect. I like to think that my rendering serves as makeup in an editorial magazine. It is there to uplift the best qualities. My objective with my art is to portray the characters in the best light possible because I want everybody to feel beautiful and seen. So even if a character has skin imperfections, what would be called imperfections, I tend to just make it more glowy and more glamorous than it really needs to be because I want people to really see themselves in my pieces portrayed beautifully. But art has plenty of purposes. So, for example, if you have a more like gruesome, edgy style and you want to make your character's imperfections pop, then you really shouldn't be hearing advice from me. Don't just do I look good in that case, but I do. No, do the opposite. Do what looks awful, you know? So maybe vertical colors of the face. But you need to learn them first. After mapping the colors of the face, I use a gradient opacity brush to do the shadows. Now, I know that a lot of people don't like to use the colors directly on the layer, but I am a one layer artist when it comes to same colors. so I usually just use the opacity brush. Now you can see that I'm applying it very carefully and making it slightly more saturated. The reference is always there because, as I said, my style is very much semi-realistic, and although I do change something about the characters, I try to keep as close as possible to the reference. The color that I used was quite dull and with not much saturation, so I applied a little bit of orange on the transition points to make the color pop. Now, under our skin there is blood, and blood's what makes us have this beautiful color. So putting a little bit of saturated tinginess makes the skin feel more realistic and makes it feel more alive. And you don't want characters that are on a screen to feel that, do you? Because then it doesn't connect with the viewer. After all that, I do a little bit of a second pass with the shadow and go to the highlights. When you're highlighting a character, it's important for you to do a slight variation of the color, because when you apply a slight like greenish white to a cream beige or brown background, the highlight will turn into a very natural color that really pops off the page, which I do think is important. We're gonna do a little tangent here on darker skin. Now, because on this specific drawing there was the one with a very dark skin tone, I decided to do this little segment where I talk about it. Well, basically, I feel like a lot of people have difficulties regarding darker skin tones because they do not understand that it is not a one size fits all kind of deal. So you really have to focus on the highlights and on different kind of color variations. So what I personally like to do, even though my skin is really pale, so I am no authority when it comes to this kind of business, um, I like to really give a more brownish tinge to this area of like the nose, to the inner cheek and inner eye. I find it looks really lovely and it brings the character to light, because I feel that because it is a darker color, we tend to lose a little bit of the dimension, and these highlights bring it back without whitewashing the character. I also think putting some highlights that are more specific and more that have an intentional look to them, and this glossy kind of feel really helps them to pop off the page. So do not restrict yourself with only one kind of skin coloring, because we are all here to just do the best as we can as artists to portray the best kind of diversity. And dark skin tones do have a lot of reflective quality to them, so that's probably why in a lot of drawings and a lot of artists have very much difficult time with making the characters that have dark skin not dull, when it's very much beautiful, when it's very much like a thing that really pops off in TV shows or in photography. So that's just something that you should be aware about. Back to this drawing, I do what I call my color correction combo. That is duplicate the layer, then put some color grading on it, and use overlay, because it bumps up the contrast, and gives like this more saturated look to it. And then I go on the color sliders that you can see on the little toolbox on Procreate, and fix a little bit of the hue of the skin so it pops off more. I repeat this process to every single element of the illustration, and then I just merge the layers together. Now I know that's a big pet peeve to people, especially because I do merge the line art later. Because I do merge the line art layer together too. But hear me out. It really saves a piece. That's my favorite part. So I just group them together and then duplicate it just in case I need to access some layer, but I usually don't. And then I go for it. I start giving the eyes more contrast. I feel like dull eyes is something that no artist ever wants. So I do give them a little more attention and more contrast and more shine. I personally, in my style, have no eye shinies. I only have like the white pupil, and that's a technique that I apply because I feel like my characters can look a little bit cross-eyed. Cause I feel like my characters look a bit cross-eyed with a highlight, so I just do the pupil white already, so I don't have that problem. But because of that, my eyes can also look a little bit dead, so I have to pay a little bit more attention to it. Then I do the lashes and stuff. Fun fact that my art style actually doesn't have upper lashes, which seems a little bit out of character for me. And then I do like more hard highlights. For this point of process, I'm basically only using the dry brush of Procreate. I do not use any imported brushes from any pack or anything. The only custom brushes that I do have are for jewelry and pearls. When I feel like the eyes are ready, I keep flipping back and forward with the layers to see what I forgot to do and what could be done better. So for an example, I think I didn't blend Piper's skin that well. Piper is the name of the character that I'm coloring right now. So I came back to it, or I felt the lips were not shiny or colorful enough, so I did a second pass on them. A little tip for if you're drawing lips for darker skin tone, that is not very much her case, although her skin is quite dark. The trick was not applied, but um, use a little bit of a darker, more saturated color on the edges, especially a more purpley tone, and then on the inside of the mouth, come back with a little bit of a pinkish, more um, girlish maybe tone, and give the lips some depth. I feel like that's something that a lot of artists miss when drawing people of color, and I think it's really important. At this stage, I am rendering the nose and giving the skin a little bit of a cross hatching. I love that. I feel it gives my art a little bit of a more rustic feel, because one of my drawing teachers said that my skin looked really, really plastic, and I'm really trying to change that and give it a more like realistic feel. Although we don't have lines on our skin, it's a really good way to apply texture. Then I go to the little teeth and paint a little bit of a darker color. Not shading the teeth is also a really big part of why it can look weird. If you see all my rendering up close is very, very simple but very, very effective. From afar, I am personally a social media artist, so there is no point in focusing too much on details, just details that can be seen from far, far away. Because, that's not what people will notice. They will notice how a certain character shouldn't have glasses. And to be honest, it's kind of upsetting to me personally. Like, if you don't like what I'm drawing or the media that it's from, I really can't help it. It's just my art, and I haven't written the shows or the books or casted anyone. I am just an artist trying to make a living out of social media. And to be honest, I like to draw the characters the way I draw. I hate when people go into my posts and just hate on like a 12-year-old because they were casted. Like, I'm sorry you don't think they look like that in the books, but I have nothing to do with it. And you shouldn't be hating on kids in the first place. Back to the drawing real quick. I apply this to every layer and it's done after like 6 hours of work. So thank you very very much for watching. I hope you enjoyed today's video. I'm really really sorry that my English sucked today, like really really did. There are some parts that I can't even understand, so I can't really put subtitles in. I really hope you liked my new avatar. I didn't spend time on it at all, but I do hope to develop it more. The concept is kind of like a storyboard, so I felt it was appropriate to show it off today when it isn't ready yet. So, hope you guys have a great day. Be nice to people, and bye.